Students from the University of Johannesburg are marching from the institution's Kingway campus to the Bunting Road campus in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, in solidarity with the plight of their Wits counterparts. Meanwhile, hundreds of Wits students again marched in Braamfontein and the Joburg CBD today because the university is not allowing all students with debt to register. Yesterday, the situation in Braamfontein became violent and a man was shot and killed during clashes between the police and the students. Well, let's cross now to Hasina Gori, who's been following students from UJ who've made their way to Braamfontein. Hasina, tell us how peaceful this is right now. How many people involved?
Good evening. Yes, so we've been following these students from the University of Johannesburg, who also took to the streets this afternoon in the similar vein of the students of the University of Witwatersrand, calling for the financial inclusion of students with historical debt to be allowed to register and resume their studies. Their protest began at the Auckland Park Kingsway campus, opposite Campus Square, where peak time traffic was halted for a short period. They then proceeded through Empire Road to Bunting campus and then decided to come into Braamfontein. Where we are right now is where 35-year-old Mthokozisi Ntumba took his last breath in Braamfontein. I'm going to ask my camera colleague Skello to just pan and give you a sense of the area where we at. We know that he took his last breath on these pavements here after he was shot by police officers. In that exclusive CCTV footage that the SABC obtained, we see him taking his last breath after being shot by police officers at least 3 times, once in the chest and once in the face, as well as on his side. With me, though, I have the branch leader of the EFF of UJ, Lebogang Mokwena. Can you tell us what made UJ students take to the streets today?
Emotionally, mentally, we have always been part of the protest. But today we were really fed up by what happened yesterday. I was here. I saw it happen. So today I mobilized my campus and mobilized the students from our campus together with other comrades that, comrades, it's about time we take this to the streets. We cannot tolerate this anymore. It's been happening since apartheid. It happened 2015 Fismal's fall, 2016 Fismal's fall. So it was the time for us to not sit back but to actually join and show that together we are united, we are stronger than ever.
You mentioned that you were here yesterday. Can you describe what you experienced when you were here yesterday?
Yesterday, immediately when I arrived got off the bus from UJ, already there were gunshots. By the time I got here, gunshots were flying left, right, and center. Then next thing we see a body. So I did not even get close to the body. It was traumatizing. People were crying. The police didn't care. They were pushing people away. They were just very irrational and insensitive.
As a branch leader of, at a student level, we've heard today from the Minister, Blyden Zamande, saying that first-year students have found the funding for them. Do you feel that that's enough being done?
I just feel like he's bluffing. He's definitely bluffing. The funding was there. They're just trying to loot. There's this thing of general looting. They are looting every entity that is made to serve black people, and it's looted by black people.
We know that within student politics, there are different factions like in any other politics. But we heard from the ANC SG, Ace Makashule, earlier today when the protester did go to Lutuli House saying and calling on students to be united. And also saying that this fight was not just a Wits University fight, but one for all other universities to take part. And it's an issue across the board. What is your take on that?
I definitely agree. This fight should never be politicalized, especially SARS. We have a problem with ANC comrades. Every time we are trying to do this, they bring shirts, they campaign. In such matters where we are fighting for students, we are fighting for the future generations, we are fighting for the past generations. So it definitely should be for everyone. We should not even be wearing regalia right now. We should be fighting as a united front of students without any political banner.
Thank you so much. That was a branch leader speaking to us here in Braamfontein, where they have decided to come and pay their respects to the 35-year-old who lost his life yesterday on the sidelines of the protest. From what we've seen and what we understand now, he was a civilian. He was working for the city of Tshwane in the Human Settlements Department. And what had occurred for him was that he had left a doctor's appointment. And as he left and came out, police had come out and, shot at him, and he took his last breath here. This it is for now. We know a candlelight memorial will be held later on this evening to pay respect to the fallen hero. That's it for me for now. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Hasina Gori. And just incredible. Yes, a father of 4 visiting the doctor just came out, got caught up. Somebody who works for government killed at the hands of SAPS officials. We'll bring you lots more analysis tonight, and we'll follow those protests and that candlelight ceremony for you. Now, government has announced additional
As institutions of higher learning reopen, students taking to the streets to fight against academic exclusion. The 2015 Fees Must Fall protests paved the way for free tertiary education. Now, renewed pressure on authorities. After consultation, government announced additional funding for NSFAS to address the 2021 shortfall.
Cabinet met yesterday and discussed the matter of the funding shortfall, which I had reported earlier in the week. And the particular issue under discussion was shortfall in the funding for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, for 2021, which has delayed NSFAS in being able to communicate funding decisions to students and institutions for first-year students.
Government considered that it must find other ways to ensure that funds are available going forward.
These challenges have delayed the finalization of the registration of first-year university students. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the challenge of the scheme, some of this being the extended academic year and the number of students qualifying for funding due to parents having lost their jobs.
Cabinet also sent condolences to the family of Mthokozisi Ntumba. The father of 4 was shot and killed during the student protest. Cabinet urged police to exercise restraints while dealing with protests.
Cabinet urges the police to exercise restraint whilst ensuring public order during protest and never to use live ammunition.
Higher Education says NSFAS funding has increased to 42.1 billion rand from 36 billion rand last year. Mthokozisi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, let's look a bit more at the reasons behind the latest student protests that turned deadly yesterday. Wits students say their fight is about financial exclusion. Some students have not been allowed to register because they owe Wits historic debt above a certain threshold. The student leaders say this excludes academically deserving students who can't afford to pay. The university says it's made various concessions for students who don't owe very high amounts, but beyond that, it cannot offer free education. The student leaders are saying they will mobilize students from other institutions, and we did see that activity outside the University of Johannesburg. Meanwhile, at the same time, government has been scrambling to find that money to fund its promise to move towards fee-free education. This comes after Monday, when the Minister, Blade Nzimande, said the National Student Financial Aid Scheme had experienced a financial shortfall, triggering its failure to confirm funding for first-year students. To discuss, we're joined by the National Council Deputy Chairperson at Equal Education, Sindisa Monakali. Mr. Monakali, thank you for being with us. So this NSFAS issue, that's one issue that stopped first-year students from registering. funding in some cases. Government said it was looking for the money. Now that money will be found. Should we not mix that up with the exclusion issue, the debt issue at Wits University, or is this all part of the general frustrations of students?
Thanks for having me. I think we should, and also there should be a long-term plan on how that money is going to be, where that money is going to come from, and this is not something that is new. There were other protests that were happening here in the Western Cape last year in higher education around student accommodation and around NSFAS exclusion. So this has been happening for years, from 2015 until now. So it's not something that is new, and that should also be part of the plans in moving forward. We can't keep on having all of these protests each and every year when we want access to higher education. And there should be an exception. There should be an exception, because why students can't access this higher education right now? Because we remember, we are under a pandemic, and no one had planned about the COVID-19 from last year. So we can't deny access to students right now, because they are also constrained in terms of accessing higher learning last year. Students had to move to online learning. That is another different form of teaching and learning that has been happening in higher education. And so those things should be also considered in terms of accepting students to access this higher education. And they should also revisiting the Convention's recommendations of 2015 and 2016, because it seems like those plans are now failing us. And the private sector should be coming to the party, and other different stakeholders should be coming and making sure that we have a clear plan on where to fund, or where to take the money to fund higher education in this country. And we can't rely on a austerity budget that was being proposed by Parliament. We can't rely on taking from basic services like your health and your public education. We can't allow that. There should be other provisions. There should be a budget that is pro-poor, not anti-poor. The budget that is not going to push us into poverty.
Let's just put this into context. So there was a promise that we'll move towards fee-free education. Then government does start providing grants for some poor students, so they don't have to pay the money back. But this year, after COVID-19, after huge financial, after the fallout, many people not getting jobs, parents not able to pay. Now NSFAS can't come up with the money, even for those students it said it would fund. The government says that will be found, but I mean, classes started. Did government make a huge mess here and leave universities in a very precarious position?
Yeah, you are quite right. Because now the students are directing the fight to the universities, whereas government didn't make provision of dealing with this. And I know they will be saying that they will be dealing with COVID-19, they will be making plans and taking money to responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. That cannot be the only excuse that they bring to us, because they treat education as if it's like a privilege of some sort, but it's our basic right at the end of the day. So it seems like the government didn't have a plan for this year in terms of funding students. That is why the budget that was proposed by Parliament is taken from the basic services that are supposed to be delivered this year.
Mr. Monakali, though, there seems to be a specific issue at Wits. Wits says it cannot allow students who owe, and I think it's well over 100,000 Rand, if they owe that in historic debt, they can't register. They said they tried to help the students who owed less than that with a hardship fund. If they owe a very little amount, they can still register. Surely there has to be a limit, otherwise the university will collapse. So what do you do about that issue?
I mean, they should draw also lessons from other institutions that are in South Africa. UWC have allowed 100% of access into deserving students to register at the institution. UJ have done the same thing, and other institutions are following the same trend. They should be also.
But can those universities afford to do so? At some point, surely it'll become crumbling. It'll all come crumbling down, because that basically means the universities are being forced to provide free education for many students.
That is when the government should step in. That is when the National Treasury should be stepping in and forming part of this conversation on where this money will come from, but not taking from the poor.
All right. Thank you very much. From Equal Education, Sindisa Monakali. And we'll bring you some more analysis a little bit later on, looking at how the police behaved as well. President Cyril Ramaphosa says he was deeply disturbed by the death of the 35-year-old man who was shot and killed by police on Wednesday, adding that there appears to be overreach in the conduct of the police involved. The man, who has since been identified as Mthokozisi Ntumba, died outside a clinic in Braamfontein seconds after exiting the facility. South Africa's Police Minister Beckie visited the home of the deceased this morning as the protests continued in and around the Johannesburg CBD.
Mthokozisi Ntumba was an innocent bystander, and indeed, even I would say even the students, much as they were protesting, the way I saw it on television did not warrant the type of resistance and push from our police.
At the annual opening of the National House of Traditional Leaders, President Cyril Ramaphosa began his address by extending his condolences to the family of the late Mthokozisi Ntumba. The president has emphasized the importance of an investigation into the death, a call also made by many members of the public who are still reeling in shock. Most look to the police minister for an explanation. On his visit to the home of the deceased, Minister Beckie was at a loss for words.
As I've said with the family, and I will forever say, I can't explain it. It's something that it has no inch, it has no grain of explanation and defense on it. Somebody just, for me, went crazy.
The minister concedes that it is becoming increasingly difficult to defend against the public views on the way in which police handle protests conducted by different races.
Slowly, it's becoming very difficult to defend it. I went on that, especially in Western Cape, because it was more pronounced in Western Cape. I sat down with the management. I said, this is the public opinion and public perception on you. But myself, I try to find out the space of defending it. Slowly but surely, it's beginning to be difficult to defend it.
Kubhlungu sisi asazi sothina bengadeserve ukuthi bengahamba emhlabeni ngale ndlela ahambe ngayo. Kodwa ke ayisekho into esizoyenza. So kumele siqinele ingane zakhe. Siqine nathi. Sakhe ikhaya besilaka sonke.
The Ntumba family is still grappling with the news of his death, which was first brought to his wife's attention through the media before any information from authorities.
Oputi left the house in the morning, a good doctor. This is his home. These are the brothers. He's got kids. He was not part of any protest. It was not any of his plan. And to find out, in the news and getting the calls afterwards and having to relate the two was very shocking and devastating for us as the family.
Mthokozisi Ntumba has been described as a progressive and determined man devoted to his family.
He lost the parents at a young age, but with his brothers that you see here, they've really worked hard to be where they are. He was a professional. He was employed as a professional. He had much to offer in the department that he was working in, and for the country as well. He was a bright light.
Mthokozisi Ntumba leaves behind his brothers, wife, and 4 children. The youngest of the 4 is 8 months old. Although they appreciate the visit made by the ministry, the bereaved family says they have faith that the system will bring them justice for his tragic death. Nasipho Mncube, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, let's look at police training and behaviour. We're joined by independent researchers specialising in policing and public security, David Bruce. Mr. Bruce, thank you for being with us. There still needs to be an investigation here, but based on the footage you've seen, the concessions we've even heard from the police minister already, what do you think about what happened here?
Well, I think I should start just by saying that in just over a month's time, we're going to be marking the 10th anniversary of the death of Andries Ntumba. So we're talking about the fact that we know that rubber bullets are potentially lethal, and that particularly when they're used at close range, there's a high probability that they will result in fatalities. So, you know, if I was to answer your question, I'd be answering the question about why 10 years after the death of Andries Ntumba, there's still someone who, on the information that we have at the moment, was shot at close range with rubber bullets. So, I think, you know, I would have one or two answers to that question, but I think it's important for me to just make a note of that fact, that this isn't at all new.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also comes after the Farlam Commission looking into Marikana, saying that police training is so crucial in these sort of high volatile situations. What has been done since then? Because the whole idea was that you wouldn't have anyone, like the police minister suggested, just going crazy.
Right, okay. I think maybe things are getting a bit confused here, because the Farlam Commission itself didn't simply make recommendations for more extensive police training. It made a number of other recommendations. And one of them was a recommendation for the establishment of a panel of experts that was established in 2016 and submitted its report to the minister in 2018. So that report then was supposed to look at a range of issues to do with public order policing in South Africa, including specific issues about the types of weapons that are used and how they are used. And so one of the things that we should look at in discussing this issue is what has happened to that report and what has happened to the recommendations that were made in that report, which then deals in a lot of detail with questions to do with weapons that are used in public order policing and the standards that are applied in terms of how they are used.
Sure. I guess very simply, I'm asking, you know, an issue was highlighted, police training lacking in this country years ago. Has anything been done significantly around police training since?
Well, you see, I mean, I could answer the fact, because in terms of training numbers of public order police, yes, there have been a significant number of public order police members who have been through the training system. Whether that training prepares them to deal with the kinds of protests that were taking place in Braamfontein yesterday, or whether that training adequately addresses the issues to do with how they use rubber bullets is another kind of question.
Yeah.
So basically, the problem here is that it's not only a question of training, it's also a question about the regulatory framework that's in place in relation to how rubber bullets are used. And on both of those levels, in terms of the training curriculum and in terms of the regulatory framework, notwithstanding the fact that you know, Andries Ntumba was killed in April 2011, we haven't moved forward to a position where we can say that the risks related to the use of rubber bullets are adequately acknowledged and addressed, either in police training or in police standing orders and regulations, or in the manner in which public order operations are commanded.
Yeah, I mean, the police minister himself saying shots should be fired as a last resort, but it doesn't seem like that happened in this case. So are you saying there's not a clear sort of standard operating procedure? And what would that be? Say students are there and they're being aggressive. Let's say, for example, they're throwing rocks and stones at police. Is there a course of action that the police should take to minimize, obviously, fatalities and injuries?
Yes, well, I mean, you know, it's important, again, in this case, just to start with the fact that the person who has been killed, on the information that we have, was completely uninvolved in the protest. And so we've got, a series of incidents over the last 10 years where people who are uninvolved in protests have been injured. There was an incident last year where the boy called Leo Williams was killed. He was hit by a rubber bullet while, as I understand it, he was within the family home. So, the question that you're asking about people who are throwing rocks and so on, which I'm not sure that was something that was happening in this situation.
I'm not saying it was. I'm asking
if
there's a standard operating procedure that everybody understands.
No, there isn't. There isn't one that adequately addresses questions to do with, which clearly specifies when and when not members of the SAPS should use public or should use rubber bullets. And so the basic point about the fact that they hit someone who was completely uninvolved in the protest is, a key point here, because the fact is that the weapons are often used in a very reckless manner, rather than specifically targeting individuals who are involved in violent or other unlawful behavior.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate your time tonight. That was an independent researcher specializing in policing, David Bruce. Now, 24 students have during the student protest over registration challenges. Police in that instance used stun grenades to disperse the protesters.
The students have vowed to intensify their protests until their demands are met. They complain about being unable to register, while others are still waiting for response from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. It's reported one student was injured following clashes with security officials.
We have been protesting in response to what the university has been doing to students, not allowing students to register, and in response to what government is doing, such that students are not able to register the money that they have taken away, and also students that have been brutalized. As we speak right now, we have a student who's in a critical condition, fighting for her life at the Tembi Hospital. She was brutalized and beaten and injured by private security of Francis Peterson, the rector at the University of the Free State. And now there's at least been around about just over 30 students that have been arrested.
A huge police contingent has been deployed around the University of the Free State's main campus.
A group of about 50 students were seen blocking the road at the main entrance in Nelson Mandela. They were accordingly warned and given time to clear the road. The students did not adhere to the warning and started to sit down in the middle of the roads, disturbing the flow of traffic. The police then used stun grenades to disperse the students. There were 24 students arrested for contravention of Road Traffic Act and also Gatherings Act.
The university management has since extended the registration period to next week Friday. Aphumelele Mdlalane, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
All right, in other news, today marks 10 years since the devastating President Cyril Ramaphosa has condemned the killing of 35-year-old Mthokozisi Ntumba, who was shot when he was caught up in yesterday's protest action. Meanwhile, 24 students have been arrested at the University of the Free State's main campus in Bloemfontein. In sport, Mamelodi Sundowns president Patrice Motsepe needs 28 votes in tomorrow's CAF elections to Professor for Higher Education Studies at Free State University. That's Professor Thierry Lucier. Professor, thank you for being with us. My same question I asked someone from Equal Education earlier. There are two issues here in my mind. NSFAS and the funding of deserving first-year students by government, and then the decision of Wits University to not allow people to register if they owe, I think, well over 100,000 Rand in debt. What do you think is the main issue here? I mean, government or universities trying to deal with their own financial issues and deciding what to do?
Yeah, well, thank you, Francis. This is an excellent question. Well, and I think it's a question that concerns all of us because we are, as it has been mentioned, we are living with an austerity budget and higher education is unfortunately not on top of what needs to be funded. The problem goes way, way back, of course. I mean, the key principle here is that you cannot exclude academically deserving students financially. And that is, look, I was in the SRC of UCT, it was from SASCO deployed in 1999, 2000, and we were hammering then already this very same principle that you cannot exclude academically deserving students financially. NSFAS was set up then, and NSFAS has been a problem for the last 22 years, 23 years that it has been in existence since 1998. And frankly speaking, after the announcement in 2017 of free higher education for poor and working class students, NSFAS has actually become obsolete. It is a problem. It has been a problem historically, administratively weak and otherwise blundering ever again. It is actually now something that we can do away with. We must think about the efficiency in the system and sort out that aspect of it. And second of all, we must also think not just about higher education, but we must think more broadly. Here, actually, I think the Minister Bladen Simande, when he came in as a new minister years ago, with the notion of post-schooling and post-school education, really moved us forward by saying that the college sector, which was then called the further education sector, the TVET colleges, they need to become a choice, a quality choice for students, for those, even those who would be able to go to university because they have a matric bachelor pass, but even for those that it becomes a choice to go there rather than almost like a sentence because you have not been able to go into university. We need to look at it more broadly as a whole post-school system. And with that, actually, of course, that funding needs to be directed into the post-school system in general. With the TVET colleges that have been growing very fast in the last 5-10 years, with the TVET colleges now upping their quality and their desirability in the labor market as well as in the student market.
So you're saying the focus is still too much on going to university, and we know that universities are simply not able to take all the people who are applying. So many thousands are being left out. But you're saying that the other leg, the alternatives aren't being built up as was promised.
Yeah, well, it is being built up and it's actually been growing at a very fast pace, but it is not big enough yet. Currently, out of 100 young people who are between 18 and 24 in South Africa, only 20 make it into university. So our focus should not be only on the 20. Our focus should actually be on the 80 who do not make it to university, either because they dropped out of high school at some point or because they did not get a matric in order to allow them to go to university, or because they didn't want to go to university. But this would be a very small minority because university education does have a very high state. It is seen, of course, as the prime mode for social mobility, for social upward mobility, for entire families, indeed, not just for individuals, for entire families. That child, that young person who gets that engineering degree, who gets that law degree or medical degree, you know, can pull an entire family out of poverty.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to have that as well for TVET, that, you know, that plumber, we know how much plumbers are earning. but that becomes known that, you know, that it is a desirable occupation, a desirable profession.
Yeah, you pay plumbers a lot when you need one. Professor, before we have to cut this interview, a solution, please, for the current issue at Wits University. So I think this is not only about NSFAS funding. This is about students who owe historic debt, which I presume means they don't, or they did not in the past, qualify for fee-free education. So they owe tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands to the university. What should Wits do then? Should it carry the can? Its argument would be that it doesn't have the funds, and there will be no university to speak of in future. So what is the solution to this issue?
The solution has always been a systemic solution. An individual institution cannot carry that burden. You know, in the past, it has been, before fees must fall, it has been basically in the historically black institutions, in the rural institutions, away from the media, where this problem has been every year leading to protests. Fees must fall was special insofar as that it spilled over. This problem of of student financing spilled over into a metro, into Johannesburg, you know, and then it came into the public attention, the media attention, and so on, and it became a threat. Now, of course, and then the solution was a systemic one. It was not, you know, it became a national protest, and eventually it went all the way to the very top. As you mentioned earlier, it was President Zuma in 2015 who announced a zero increment, and then again in 2017 at Nasrec, he announced that there would be free higher education. This is a systemic issue. This cannot be solved by one institution alone. And what is now happening with additional funding being allocated to NSFAS, that is the immediate solution, but that is not the solution going forward long term. We need to actually sit down. It has been it has been 25 years since the last time the sector as a whole sat down together. There was Mandela's Commission on Higher Education in 1996.
Professor, I'm sorry, we have to wrap it there only because of time, and I have so many more questions to throw at you, but hopefully we can chat again. Thank you very much, Professor of Education Studies at Free State University, Terry Lucia. All right, as the world commemorates 1 year since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, countries are already preparing for their third waves. Let's take a look.
A year on, this health worker receives the jab. Millions around the world have died. The frontline workers are receiving a vaccine today. They are the first line and the last line of defense against this invisible enemy. It is hoped that this process will lead to a situation where countries can return to normalcy. Today there is hope.
I feel great.
Are you optimistic in terms of the future after receiving the vaccine?
Yeah, hopefully I'm immune to it. I get immunization, then I can live freely.
While developed countries continue their vaccination drives, a lot more still needs to be done for developing nations to be able to catch up. Richer states have begun vaccinating beyond health workers, including senior citizens and other vulnerable groups.
As we go into winter, our greatest concern is with those sections of our population at greatest risk, especially the elderly people and those with comorbidities. So we're dealing with healthcare workers now. We must cover all the 215,000 healthcare workers in Gauteng province. But at the back of it, we are already getting concerned about how soon are we going to get to the elderly people and people with comorbidities, which is the next important focus. Today, I want to say the Gauteng provincial government tabled a budget in the legislature. One of the important things we are doing is that we We're preparing also for the third wave. In other words, we have over 4,500 healthcare workers we brought into the healthcare system to deal with COVID. We are extending their contracts, the contracts of those 4,500 healthcare workers. We are adding another 1,060 healthcare workers in the facilities that we have now created.
The pandemic has left countries in a devastating situation. Even the most protected are vulnerable. Unconfirmed reports say an African head of state is receiving medical treatment in South Africa.
I think you will appreciate that patient confidentiality is one of the most sacred things that we uphold as healthcare workers. And so we never confirm or deny anyone's presence in our hospital or any of our facilities.
The challenge of access to vaccines continues. The United Nations has made a special appeal to pharmaceutical companies and rich countries to assist poorer nations. Sophie Mkweni, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Student Command about to begin their nighttime vigil to honor slain civilian Mthokozisi Ntumba, right here in Braamfontein.
At the same time, President Cyril Ramaphosa has condemned the killing of 35-year-old Ntumba, who was shot when he was caught up in yesterday's protests. He was just a bystander. Meanwhile, 24 students have been arrested at the University of the Free State's main campus in Bloemfontein. In sports, Mamelodi Sundowns President Patrice Motsepe needs 28 votes in tomorrow's CAF elections to lead the continental football body. And of course, the latest protests we're seeing again starting at Wits University. That's where the fees must fall protests began. And the issue now, financial exclusions. There's also an issue of funding for first-year students. Remember, that was delayed. Government says that it's working on that, and deserving students will be funded through NSFAS, the funding institution. We're asking you tonight, though, what mechanisms other than NSFAS do you think can be explored to fund tertiary education, given the need, given that there are so many students, whether they are poor or missing middle, saying they simply don't have the funds. And we know that many have huge historic debts, so that means no matter how they've performed academically, according to Wits, some of them cannot come back because it simply cannot provide fee-free education. Well, a night vigil is underway in Braamfontein for Mthokozisi Ntumba. Ntumba was killed by South African police during a university student protest for free education yesterday. Let's take you to Braamfontein, where our reporter Nozintombi Mia is standing by. Nozintombi, what's the mood there right now? How many people also are gathered for this vigil?
Thank you so much, Francis. There's about 50 EFF Student Command students here that are gathered here outside the Braamfontein street, literally meters or just on the spot where Mthokozisi Ntumba was fatally shot by South African police with rubber bullets, and the mood is extremely somber. You can hear the students singing, struggle songs and really trying to commiserate with the family, or the Ntumba family, and not just the Ntumba family, but this has also touched them quite deeply because Ntumba unfortunately lost his life as a result of the ongoing protest that the students are fighting for, to be able to get access to academic inclusion at the Witwatersrand. And Francis, what is also quite interesting is that we do know that the Wits Vice-Chancellor as well as the Wits SRC are expected to meet virtually at about 8 o'clock this evening. And we know that two of the most important points that are expected to be put down or to be tabled will be the first one, that the SRC students, what they're asking for is that all students be allowed to register and they not be excluded. And secondly, that the academic year be pushed back to start at the end of March as a result of the fact of the ongoing protest, and because academic learning will be done virtually, so students need to prepare for themselves. But to talk to me a little bit more about the ongoing nighttime vigil by the EFF Student Command, I do have Phumzile here with me. Phumzile, thank you so much for joining me. As an EFF Student Command, you felt very deeply about the death of Mthokozisi Ntumba, and you've held this nighttime vigil that is currently ongoing. Just talk to me a little bit more about that, Phumzile.
As you can see, it's a very sad moment for everyone. Emotions are flowing. There's a hurricane of emotions as to what happened yesterday. This goes to show how reckless our government is, right? By shooting at peacefully protesting students while all they want is free education. So Mthokozisi died for something that he doesn't have an idea of. Mthokozisi died for students to be able to register, and I think the government owes that to Mthokozisi, to give students of South Africa free education, because Mthokozisi died for free education.
Phumzile, talking about the police, we do know that IPID is investigating the circumstances that led to the death of Mr. Ntumba. But beyond that, we talk about the broader issue about police brutality, especially towards black people.
I mean, it doesn't start now. We've been harassed, we've been brutalized by police before. They started doing this on campus when we were protesting peacefully. Wits University deployed bouncers, deployed policemen to harass and assault students on campus. So what police are doing are actually using violence on students. They are abusing students. So this brutality needs to stop, because all we are calling for is free education.
Thank you, Phumzile. And Paul, I'm going to bring you in here. You're also a Wits student. You've also been protesting for the better part of this week. We know that tomorrow that top ANC brass is going to be meeting with Blade Nzimande, the Minister of Higher Education. And we've heard what the Minister of Higher Education has said about giving first years access to education. Firstly, as a student, do you believe that the Minister of Higher Education will be able to meet that demand and be able to satisfy the needs of the students?
I think Minister Blade Nzimande is lying, and he's setting the existential impression that has been existing, that he's not fit to be the Minister of Higher Education Learning. Because of, if ever it was the truth that there is funding for first years have been blocked from registration because of the NSFAS. They are awaiting the response of NSFAS. So it's wrong for him even to give an impression that there is money, whereas even today, students, first year students, they are home, they are waiting to register because of NSFAS has not responded them. The varsities are blocking them because of registrations. So it's even wrong. It's a lie.
And you know, this goes to the topic that the SRC, the Wits SRC, the broader SRC will be talking to with management later this evening about allowing all students to register, because students have not had the opportunity to register. It's been frustration after frustration, especially with the type of learning that you'll be doing, which is a virtual learning. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for registering as well?
Yes, we are ready for registering, but from the University of Wits, there is nothing that you can trust, because we've been submitting demands and memorandum to them for allowing students to register. So even the sitting can come with conditions that are not going to be favorable for the deserving student to register. So it's like something that is going to still block them, because of they will be given conditions that are not even in their favor. So I don't believe, even have faith in that sitting. I'll have the sitting when they say that the 8,000 students who were excluded are going to register without any other condition, and all of them are going to register.
All right, thank you so much. Phumzile, thank you so much for speaking to me. If I can just ask you to just stand over there while I ask my camera colleague, Mr. Sbu Tembe, to just stay on the visuals that we're seeing right here, the visuals of the ongoing EFF Student Command Night Vigil in honor of slain civilian Mr. Mthokozisi Ntumba. And we're going to end off with that. We will be keeping you updated, Francis, with the rolling coverage of this night vigil as it progresses. But we do understand from the EFF command that it is going to be a relatively brief night vigil. From there, they're going to head back towards the EFF command offices, where they'll be able to start talking about the way forward. There's going to be several things that are anticipated to happen. We know that top brass from the ANC will be meeting with the Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Blade Nzimande, to be talking about finding a way to stop the violent protests that we've been seeing spreading throughout the various universities here in Johannesburg. And we do know that while this particular vigil is ongoing, in the next hour or so, the Wits SRC will be meeting with the Vice Chancellor to talk about the way forward with regards to students and access to students registering, and when the academic year should start properly. Francis.
Right, thank you, Ntumba. She'll stay at that scene, and we'll bring you all the details of that much anticipated meeting later. Now, the High Court in Pretoria has reviewed and set aside Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande's instruction to the University of South Africa, UNISA, to reduce the intake of first-year students by 20,000. The court also reviewed and set aside UNISA's decision to have one semester for the academic year 2021. Economic Freedom Fighters Students' Command Council approached the High Court to challenge Nzimande's instruction. Another party, the Black Lawyers Association Students' Council, also applied to challenge UNISA's decision to have only one semester for the entire year. The ruling comes as UNISA experienced protests at its campuses across the country. All right, let's, Mr. Shikwambana, we have you on the line. Your response. All right, we seem to be having a problem. We do have Mandla Shikwambana, EFF Student Command leader. He's on the line for us. Mr. Shikwambana, can you hear me?
Good evening, and also good evening to your viewers.
Thank you for being with us. So the reversal of UNISA's decision, a victory for students?
Thank you very much. As the EFF Students Command, we are in jubilation, and we are very much happy to have received the good news today with regard to the court case that we had with the Department of Higher Education and University of South Africa. The case has been ruled at our favor, but it's not only on the favor of the Students' Command, but it's also on the favor of the 20,000 students who were about to be denied access for education.
Why was this decision, why was it decided in the first place that there was 20,000 too many? Why was the decision reversed by the courts as well?
You know, you must understand that the Department of Higher Education is led by a very old somebody who cannot think rationally, who is biased in the terms of decisions and directives. That
so you're talking about the Higher Education Minister, Blade Nzimande?
Yes. So with that regard, the decision of reducing the 20,000 students at the University of South Africa was not well researched, or there was no consultations made from the minister as to how much impact will it make if these 20,000 students are not going to be accepted in the issues of higher learning. So we saw it from far as the EFF Student Command to say, but the only way to go and stop these demonic directives from the minister is to approach the court. And we have approached the court, and the court, they ruled in the favor of the 20,000 and also in the favor of the EFF Students Command. We are very much happy for that. At least we are saying we still have the courts that which are sober, and now they have actually rescued 20,000 students who will be back into the system of education for this academic year 2021.
I don't know the exact position of many other universities in terms of first-year numbers, but there is complaints of an overload of many students. We know that a lot of applications have to be rejected. So is this part of the general frustration around higher education right now?
The frustration is there in the higher education, and particularly is made on the issues that people are being told that this is the quota, or universities are being told this is the quota that which the university must accept students. And we are saying as the EFF, Students' Command, the quota should not be made or to determine how many students must access education. Remember, this decision that UNISA was given, or the directive that the UNISA was given by the minister, is not only to happen, going to happen at UNISA. We're going to have such problems with the University of Limpopo, where I am currently. I heard of such things that which are actually going to happen at Wits, it's going to happen in University of Venda, it's going to happen in UKZ, and all universities. So we are saying to the Department of Higher Education, let the doors for education be open for everyone. Let the walls of education be destroyed and open the space for education. Don't tell us that university must accept this number of students because there's going to be overload and what. Let them build more universities. Let them build more classes, let them build more residences, let them build more libraries so that to accommodate everyone who wants education, and everyone wants education must access education.
All right, thank you for your time, Mandla Shikwambana, EFF Student Command President. who was shot and killed by police yesterday as he was caught in the crossfire when students were demonstrating, but he had nothing to do with the demonstrations. He had just come out of a doctor's appointment and shot and killed. Let's just listen in to what it seems like the student leaders are talking at the moment.
He is a pedophilia maniac or a blood-demanded drunkard or a Cyril Ramaphosa big-nose killer. No one will stop us. We're going to rally behind these comrades in unison. We're going to rally as of now. Like I say, leave the metro. They are just here to make sure that drunkards don't disturb us. Nothing will happen to you, comrades. Please, let's ask with a few words as we take over the streets of Braamfontein and launch the biggest gang they've never seen in this country. Amanda! Awethu!
Amanda! Amanda! Qina, fundi qina! Qina, fundi qina! Comrades, ours is very simple. I think comrade Mama actually said a mouthful. Ours is just to say, let's continue to fight. It doesn't end here. We lost a life and we cannot let it end there. We are going to fight until we attain a fee-free decolonized education in our lifetime. Sure. Banda! Banda! Awethu! Awethu! Qina, mfundi ozabalazayo, qina! Qina, mfundi ozabalazayo, qina! Ayibuye! Ayibuye! Africa! Africa! Comrades, this is a very sad moment for everyone who is here. It's a very sad moment.
Right, it sounded like one of the student leaders there saying that they want to see fee-free education in this lifetime. And this is really a night vigil in remembrance of Mthokozisi Ntumba, who died at this scene yesterday at the hands of police. The president has spoken out about this, saying he's deeply disturbed by what was seen. And of course, footage has come out. The police minister, Mthokozisi, has said that it appears that police officers lied. So if there wasn't that footage, we ran some exclusive footage. The truth may never have outed, but right now IPID is investigating what happened. We know other students were shot with rubber bullets, and unfortunately Ntumba, a father of 4, died yesterday.